Imagine being able to sit in on 1,000 private conversations with the most accomplished people in the world: billionaires, world-class athletes, artists, scientists, and adventurers. Each one willing to open up and share the lessons they learned the hard way, the mistakes they would never repeat, and the small daily choices that quietly shape their extraordinary results. That is the gift of condensed wisdom. You do not have to live 100 lives to learn 100 lifetimes worth of lessons. Tim Ferriss spent years having these conversations, drawing from his podcast interviews, personal relationships, and relentless curiosity. The result is not a single step-by-step formula, but a collection of tools, tactics, and mindsets tested in real lives that anyone can adapt to their own journey. But the value is not just in hearing what these people do, it is in understanding how they think. Because behind every success story is a way of seeing the world, a way of making choices, and a way of responding to failure that you can make your own. Think of this as a living map. Each person contributes a landmark, a trail, or a shortcut. You may not take every path, but each one gives you an option you did not have before. Some ideas will resonate immediately, others might surprise you, and a few may challenge beliefs you have held for years. That is part of the magic. Growth often comes from the unexpected. These are not distant, unrelatable superhumans. Many began with little money, no connections, and no guarantee of success. What set them apart was a willingness to learn, to experiment, and to keep moving forward when things got hard. Their lives are proof that extraordinary results are often the product of ordinary actions, repeated consistently over time. As you listen to these stories, you will notice patterns, certain habits, mindsets, and approaches that appear again and again. You will also see that no two paths are exactly alike, which is why the real power lies in picking the pieces that fit your life and building your own version of success. This is not about copying someone else's morning routine or investment strategy simply because it worked for them. It is about collecting tools and deciding which ones you will keep in your own toolbox. The goal is not perfection, it is progress, adaptability, and alignment with what truly matters to you. Over the course of this journey, you will hear about people who train their minds like athletes, who manage their energy with the same care they give their finances, and who see setbacks not as signs to stop, but as signals to adjust. You will see how they combine ambition with purpose, discipline with flexibility, and success with generosity. And you will realize something important: you do not need to be famous, rich, or lucky to apply these lessons. You only need to be willing to try, to learn, and to keep going. That is the essence of what makes these tools powerful. They work in the hands of anyone who uses them. Part 1: The wealth of wisdom learning from extraordinary lives. If you have ever watched a master at work, a chef moving in a kitchen like it is a stage, a musician pulling impossible sounds from an instrument, an athlete making a near impossible move look effortless, you have probably felt that quiet awe that comes from witnessing true skill. But what you might not see is the years of trial, error, and refinement that live beneath the surface. Now imagine if you could ask these people not just what they do, but how they think. What choices did they make when they had no certainty of success? How did they keep going when the results were slow to show? What did they avoid at all costs, and what did they hold on to no matter what? That is the wealth of wisdom hidden in the lives of extraordinary people. Tim Ferriss has spent countless hours with individuals who have reshaped their industries and rewritten the limits of their fields. Some are names you would recognize instantly: Olympic athletes, best-selling authors, tech entrepreneurs. Others are quietly exceptional, their influence felt in ways that do not require headlines. All of them carry lessons worth hearing. One of the most striking things about these conversations is how varied the advice can be, yet how often certain themes repeat themselves. A world-class investor and a decorated Navy SEAL may lead lives that could not be more different, but both might stress the importance of morning rituals, mental discipline, and asking better questions. For instance, you might hear about a chess grandmaster who does not just practice moves on a board but studies human psychology to understand how opponents think under pressure. Or a billionaire who spends the first hour of every morning reading about industries completely unrelated to their own, knowing that unexpected connections can lead to groundbreaking ideas. The beauty of learning from so many different voices is that you begin to see success not as a single narrow road, but as a network of paths, each leading to the same destination, a life you choose deliberately, rather than one you stumble into. It is also humbling to realize how many of these high achievers faced early failures, and not small ones. Some lost everything more than once. Others endured public embarrassment, physical injuries, or years of being underestimated. What separated them from the crowd was not the absence of setbacks, but the way they treated each obstacle as a source of information rather than a verdict on their potential. You hear, Again and again, stories of someone who took an unconventional approach that seemed risky at the time, only to have it become the very thing that set them apart. A comedian who studied marketing so he could promote his own shows when clubs ignored him. A scientist who learned storytelling so she could explain her research to non-scientists and attract funding. These are not accidents, they are the results of thinking creatively about the tools at one's disposal. The titans in these stories are generous with what they have learned, but they also emphasize a truth that is easy to forget: advice is only useful if you act on it. You can fill notebooks with insights, underline hundreds of quotes, and listen to brilliant minds for hours, but unless you translate that knowledge into behavior, it remains potential, not progress. That is why so many of them focus on small, repeatable actions. A writer who commits to producing just 2 pages a day. A CEO who starts every meeting by asking, "What is the most important thing we need to accomplish today?" A trainer who insists on doing 5 minutes of stretching before bed, not because 5 minutes will transform their body overnight, but because consistency transforms everything over time. What becomes clear as you listen to these lessons is that wisdom is not a trophy you win at the end of a long career, it is something you build every day, choice by choice. It is in the curiosity to ask, "What can I learn from this?" when others are complaining. It is in the courage to admit when something is not working and to try another way. It is in the humility to learn from people younger, less experienced, or from a completely different field than your own. In that sense, the wealth of wisdom is available to everyone. You do not need a best-selling book or a world record to start collecting it. All you need is the willingness to pay attention, to seek out the people who are doing what you admire, and to really listen to how they got there. Because if you collect enough of these lessons, you will find that one day you are not just learning from extraordinary lives, you are living one. Part 2, Building Physical Resilience and Energy. If you ask most people what they would do with more energy, the answers come quickly: spend more time with family, build a side business, travel, finally start that creative project. The desire is always there, yet the fuel to do it all often runs out. High performers know something that many overlook: energy is not a luxury, it is a foundation. Without it, even the best ideas remain untouched, and the clearest goals gather dust. The individuals Tim Ferriss spoke with treat their physical well-being as an asset, not an afterthought. They understand that strength, stamina, and recovery are not about vanity or chasing a certain look, they are about creating a body capable of sustaining ambition. One common thread is the rejection of all-or-nothing thinking. A Navy SEAL might talk about doing short, high-intensity workouts during missions, proving that even 10 focused minutes can have a lasting impact. An entrepreneur with a packed schedule might make a non-negotiable rule: a brisk walk every afternoon, no matter how busy the day gets. These habits are small, but they are strategically chosen to be impossible to skip for long. Nutrition plays a central role, but rarely in the form of extreme diets. A world-class investor describes eating the same breakfast every day: simple, balanced, and free of decision fatigue. A professional athlete might swear by hydration as their secret weapon, knowing that even mild dehydration can dull focus and slow reaction time. The point is not perfection, but reliability, choices that support energy rather than drain it. Recovery is another overlooked pillar. Many high achievers credit their edge not to working longer hours, but to mastering the art of rest. This could mean daily meditation, stretching routines, or simply going to bed early enough to wake up without an alarm. An award-winning filmmaker once said that his best creative ideas arrive only after a good night's sleep, proving that productivity is not about how much time you work, but how well you protect the time you rest. And then there is the mental aspect of physical resilience. Some of the most successful people deliberately put themselves in uncomfortable situations: ice baths, endurance challenges, fasting, not for the physical gains alone, but to train their minds to remain calm under stress. They know that discomfort in a controlled setting builds confidence in chaotic ones. What stands out is how personalized these approaches are. A best-selling author may use yoga to center herself before writing, while a tech founder might lift weights to counter the hours spent at a desk. The method is less important than the principle. Your physical state shapes your mental and emotional state, and if you want to perform at your best, you cannot ignore the machine you live in. High performers also treat movement as a form of thinking. A venture capitalist might take all important calls while walking. A scientist might solve complex problems during long hikes. Physical activity is not a break from work, it is an extension of it, fueling clarity and creativity. Perhaps the most refreshing part of these stories is that they remove the illusion that you must overhaul your entire life to feel better. You do not need to train like an Olympian or eat like a celebrity nutritionist's client. You need consistent, doable habits that you actually enjoy, because enjoyment is what keeps you coming back when motivation fades. So, building physical resilience and energy is not just about adding years to your life, it is about adding life to your years. It is about having the strength to play with your children after a long day, the stamina to chase an idea until it becomes real, and the presence of mind to face challenges without burning out. In the lives of the Titans, physical vitality is never optional, it is the quiet force powering everything else they do. Part 3, Mental Clarity and Focus. In a world where every device in your pocket is competing for your attention, mental clarity is no longer something you stumble into, it is something you protect, almost like a fortress. The people at the top of their fields know that their greatest edge is not always working harder, but thinking more clearly than anyone else. When you listen to their stories, one truth emerges: focus is not about having more willpower, it is about designing an environment where distractions struggle to survive. A best-selling novelist might write on a laptop stripped of internet access. A CEO might block entire mornings for deep work, letting the world wait while he solves the problems only he can solve. These are not grand acts of discipline, they are choices that make discipline easier. Meditation comes up again and again, though in forms as varied as the people practicing it. Some sit quietly for 20 minutes each morning, focusing on their breath. Others simply take a moment before a meeting to breathe deeply and clear the noise from their heads. An Olympic coach described it best: it is not about becoming a monk. It is about having a mind that can stay where it is when you need it most. Journaling is another tool many use to sharpen thought. One entrepreneur spends 5 minutes every morning answering 3 questions: what am I grateful for? What must get done today? What could make today great? It is not just self-reflection, it is a daily tune-up for the mind. When you start your day by deciding what matters most, you are less likely to spend it reacting to what matters least. Some high achievers have developed unique rituals to break through mental fog. A chess champion might play a quick game of speed chess before tackling a hard problem, training his brain to think quickly under time pressure. A designer might doodle for 10 minutes before starting work, warming up the creative part of her mind. These habits are small signals to the brain: it is time to perform. Of course, focus is not just about cutting distractions, it is about deciding what is worth your attention in the first place. Many of the Titans ask a version of the same question when facing new opportunities: if I say yes to this, what am I saying no to? That single question has saved them from overcommitting, chasing the wrong projects, or filling their calendars with things that look productive but lead nowhere. There is also a willingness to do less, but better. One investor described his approach to business as shooting fewer arrows, but aiming each one with care. Another turned down dozens of speaking offers in a year so she could focus on writing a single book that truly mattered to her. In both cases, clarity came not from doing everything, but from having the courage to choose. What might surprise you is how often high performers use physical routines to reset their mental state. A long walk after a stressful meeting. 10 push ups before an important call. These moments act like hitting the refresh button in the brain, clearing away the mental clutter before it turns into a spiral of distraction. And perhaps most importantly, they give themselves permission to step back. A world-class photographer once said, "If I am stuck, I do not push harder, I step away until I can see the picture again." It is a reminder that focus is not about straining harder to pay attention, but about knowing when your mind needs a break so it can return sharper than before. Mental clarity and focus are not traits you are born with, they are skills, and like any skill, they grow with practice. In the lives of the Titans, this practice is woven into the fabric of their days. They do not wait for the rare moment when the world is quiet enough to think, they create the quiet. They do not hope for a flash of insight, they make space for it to arrive. And in doing so, they prove that in a noisy world, the rarest skill of all is learning to truly hear your own mind. Part 4, Wealth and Strategic Thinking. When most people hear the word wealth, they think about numbers in a bank account. But for the high performers Tim Ferriss has interviewed, wealth is rarely just about money. It is about freedom, the ability to choose how to spend their time, where to focus their energy, and what kind of work they say yes to. Money is simply the tool that makes that freedom possible. These individuals think about money differently. They see it less as a trophy and more as a resource to be multiplied and protected. Many treat their decisions like a chessboard, not reacting to the move in front of them, but thinking several moves ahead. That is strategic thinking in action. One investor explained that he never looks for perfect opportunities. He looks for situations where the downside is minimal but the upside is significant. In other words, he is not chasing every shiny idea, he is searching for those few moves that could change the entire game. This mindset is visible across many industries, a filmmaker choosing one groundbreaking project over several safe ones, or a startup founder focusing on one powerful feature rather than building a cluttered product. A common thread among these wealth builders is that they rarely rely on a single source of income. A professional athlete might invest in real estate. A best-selling author might build online courses. A software entrepreneur might own shares in multiple unrelated businesses. It is not just diversification for safety, it is building layers of freedom, so that no single setback can take it all away. Interestingly, many credit their wealth not to the deals they said yes to, but to the ones they had the discipline to refuse. There is a story of an entrepreneur who turned down an offer to sell his company for millions because he believed the business could grow much larger. The offer was tempting, but he trusted his long-term vision, and a few years later, the company sold for 10 times that amount. Strategic thinkers also spend significant time learning how money works. They study the patterns of markets, understand the basics of investing, and keep a close watch on their expenses. One titan described it as treating money like a business partner. You need to know where it is, what it is doing, and whether it is working as hard for you as you are for it. But wealth in their eyes is not hoarded. It is used to buy time, experiences, and the ability to work on meaningful projects. A billionaire investor spends a portion of his fortune funding scientific research that might not pay off for decades. A successful tech founder allocates a set percentage of earnings to charitable causes each year. In both cases, wealth becomes a lever for impact. Strategic thinking is not only applied to finances, it is applied to life. Many high achievers map out 5-year or 10-year visions, not just for business, but for relationships, health, and personal growth. They make decisions today with those future visions in mind, even if it means delaying gratification in the short term. Another striking habit is their willingness to seek advice from people who have already walked the path. Before making a major investment, they will ask, who has succeeded in this area? What mistakes did they make? What would they do differently if they had to start over? They understand that learning from others' failures is far cheaper than repeating them. Wealth and strategic thinking, in their hands, are not about building walls of gold. They are about constructing a life with strong foundations where choices are made from a position of strength, not desperation. And while their strategies differ, the principle remains the same: the smartest moves are rarely the most obvious ones, and the greatest returns often come from patience, preparation, and the courage to think beyond the next step. For these titans, wealth is not simply counted, it is crafted. And once crafted, it is used to create the one thing they value more than money itself, a life they cannot wait to live. Part 5, Mastering Habits and Systems. If you were to follow one of these high performers for a week, you might expect to see moments of explosive effort, long nights, last-minute bursts of genius, dramatic breakthroughs. But what you would actually find is something far less dramatic and far more powerful: routines. Systems. Small, repeated actions that stack on top of each other like bricks, building a structure that can hold up their biggest ambitions. The most successful people rarely rely on motivation alone. They know that motivation is like the weather: pleasant when it shows up, unreliable when you most need it. Systems, on the other hand, do not depend on your mood. They carry you forward whether you feel ready or not. One Olympic gold medalist does the same warm-up at the same time every day, even on days she is not training. The routine signals to her body and mind, it is time to perform. An entrepreneur who built a billion-dollar company has a morning checklist he has followed for over a decade. The tasks themselves are simple: make the bed, drink a glass of water, review the day's priorities, but they serve as a daily rhythm that keeps him grounded, no matter how chaotic business becomes. Habits are not always about discipline in the traditional sense. Sometimes they are about removing decisions entirely. A famous investor wears the same style of clothing every day to avoid wasting mental energy on choices that do not matter. A best-selling author uses a specific writing playlist so that her brain associates those songs with creative flow. By automating the small things, they protect their focus for the work that matters most. Systems go beyond daily rituals, they are frameworks for how to handle challenges. For example, a venture capitalist has a decision journal where he records the reasoning behind major choices. Months or years later, he can revisit those entries and see where his thinking was sound and where it went wrong. Over time, this process refines his judgment, turning every decision into a learning opportunity. Accountability also plays a role. Many of the titans have partners, coaches, or peer groups who keep them honest. A writer might send a chapter draft to a friend every week. A fitness coach might text daily check-ins to his training group. Accountability is not about punishment, it is about having someone who will notice if you start drifting from the path you set for yourself. Perhaps the most overlooked aspect of habits and systems is that they often start small. A tech founder began his fitness journey with just one push-up a day. It seemed laughably easy, but it was impossible to skip. Soon one push-up became 10, then 20, then a complete workout routine. The key was not the size of the habit, but its ability to grow without breaking. High performers are also willing to adjust their systems when life changes. A professional athlete recovering from injury adapts his routine to focus on mobility instead of strength. A business leader with a newborn shifts her work hours to match the baby's sleep schedule. They understand that systems are living things, they must evolve if they are going to survive. Most importantly, habits and systems give these individuals a kind of quiet confidence. When you know your daily actions are carrying you toward your goal, you do not need to obsess over the outcome. You simply follow the steps, trusting that consistency will deliver results in its own time. And so, for the titans, mastery is not about a single heroic effort. It is about the invisible scaffolding of their days, the routines that move them forward when the excitement has faded, the systems that catch them when life tries to pull them off course, and the habits that shape who they are becoming long before the world sees the results. Part 6, Learning, Experimentation, and Adaptability. If there is one trait that unites the people Tim Ferriss has spoken with, it is their refusal to stop being students. No matter how high they climb, they carry a kind of restless curiosity, as if the world is a puzzle that keeps changing its shape and they are determined to keep solving it. For them, learning is not confined to classrooms or books, it is woven into daily life. A world-class chef experiments with new ingredients the way a musician plays with new chords. A tech entrepreneur treats every product launch as a data-gathering mission, not just a business move. Failure is not something to be feared, it is part of the tuition they willingly pay to learn faster. One investor shared that when he loses money on a deal, he immediately writes down 3 things: what happened, what he misjudged, and what he will change next time. That practice turns every setback into a laboratory for better decision-making. This is a common theme among the titans. They are not simply resilient, they are adaptive. They do not just recover from mistakes, they rewire their approach because of them. Experimentation often happens in small, low-risk ways before big moves are made. A filmmaker might shoot a short scene on a cheap camera to test how an audience reacts. A business founder might run a small pilot program with a handful of customers before launching nationally. They understand that a small test can save years of wasted effort. Adaptability also means being willing to abandon something that no longer works, even if it once brought success. This can be harder than it sounds. A championship athlete might have to change their training style as their body ages. A company leader might need to let go of a product line that was once the backbone of their brand. The titans are able to make these decisions because they care more about staying relevant than staying comfortable. Many also practice learning in public. They share their experiments, insights, and even their failures with peers or audiences. This openness invites feedback, accelerates improvement, and sometimes attracts collaborators who can help them reach the next level. It is the opposite of guarding secrets. They treat knowledge as something to be traded, not hoarded. Interestingly, adaptability is not just about reacting to change, it is also about anticipating it. Some of these high achievers set aside time each week to explore trends, read unusual sources, or study industries completely unrelated to their own. By feeding their minds with diverse ideas, they are more likely to spot patterns before others do. There is also a deep humility in their approach to learning. They are willing to be the beginner in the room, even after decades of expertise. A billionaire investor takes courses alongside teenagers learning to code. A best-selling author sits in writing workshops with complete newcomers. They do not confuse experience with omniscience. They know that the moment they stop learning, they start falling behind. And perhaps the most inspiring aspect is how much they enjoy the process itself. They are not just chasing the end result, they find genuine satisfaction in the act of exploration. For them, the unknown is not intimidating, it is an invitation. So while the world sees their achievements as proof of mastery, the truth is more dynamic. They are masters because they are always willing to be students again. They experiment, they adjust, they try, they fail, they try again. And in doing so, They remind us that adaptability is not a backup plan for when things go wrong, it is the main strategy for making things go right in a world that never stops changing. Part 7, Purpose, Fulfillment, and Legacy. For all the achievements, for all the wealth, for all the accolades that the titans of our time collect, there comes a moment when they all seem to ask themselves the same question: what is this really for? Purpose is the thread that runs quietly through their stories, often emerging after the money has been made and the status secured. At some point, they realize that the endless chase for more success, more recognition, more power begins to feel hollow without something deeper to anchor it. One former tech executive, after selling his company for a staggering sum, spent 2 years in what he called a self-imposed wandering. He traveled without an agenda, read widely, and spent time with people outside the tech world. What he discovered was not another billion-dollar idea, but a simple truth: the work that gave him the most joy was mentoring young founders, helping them avoid the mistakes he had made. For others, purpose comes from creative expression. A legendary musician once said that his career shifted when he stopped writing songs to top the charts and started writing songs that expressed what he truly felt. Ironically, it was this change, this move toward authenticity, that led to some of his most successful work. Fulfillment is rarely about the applause. It is about alignment, when what you do each day matches who you believe yourself to be. Many of the people Tim Ferriss has interviewed measure their life not by external rewards but by internal harmony. Are they spending time with the people they love? Are they doing work they are proud of? Are they using their talents in a way that makes a difference? Legacy enters the picture when they start thinking about what will remain after they are gone. Not just in terms of buildings, foundations, or products, but in terms of the impact they have had on others. A doctor dedicates her later career to training the next generation of physicians. A filmmaker uses his influence to open doors for underrepresented storytellers. These are not gestures of charity alone, they are deliberate choices to plant seeds that will grow in fields they may never walk through themselves. There is also a common shift in how they define winning. In the early stages, success often meant beating the competition, proving themselves, climbing higher. But in the later chapters, it means creating something enduring, building relationships that last, and knowing they left the world, or at least a corner of it, better than they found it. Some find fulfillment in simplifying their lives. After decades of non-stop hustle, they begin to strip away obligations that no longer serve them. They focus on fewer projects, but each one matters more. They trade being busy for being present. Purpose, fulfillment, and legacy are not final destinations, they are ongoing choices. And for the titans, these choices become the compass by which they navigate everything else. The systems, the strategies, the habits, the learning, all of it is in service of a life that is not only successful, but also meaningful. And perhaps that is the ultimate lesson, that greatness is not measured solely by what you achieve, but by how you live, and by what you give back when the spotlight has moved on. When you pull back and look at the lives of these extraordinary people side by side, the patterns become hard to ignore. They may come from different worlds, boardrooms, studios, laboratories, sports arenas, but the forces that drive them are strikingly similar. They build habits that keep them steady. They learn relentlessly, experiment without fear, and adapt with grace. They value relationships and seek purpose beyond the scoreboard of wealth or fame. The real gift in their stories is not that they are superhuman, but that they are living proof of what is possible when curiosity, discipline, and intention meet. They remind us that the gap between where we are and where we want to be is bridged not by one grand leap, but by steady steps, taken with awareness. And perhaps most importantly, they show that the tools of titans are not locked away for a chosen few. They are here, in plain sight, ready for anyone willing to pick them up and put them to use. Whether your dream is to build a business, create art, master a skill, or simply live with greater clarity, the map has been drawn. The next move, the first step, is yours to take.